$1 trillion railway is losing money on purpose. Across China, bullet trains glide at 350 kilometers an hour, stopping at glass stations bigger than airports, then cutting across deserts, mountains, and towns that once took a day to reach. By the end of 2025, the network passed 50,000 kilometers, more high-speed track than every other country combined. 5 years earlier, it had 38,000 kilometers. Around $130 billion went into rail construction, and yet the company behind it carries almost $1 trillion in debt. Only about 6 lines cover operating costs. Roughly 4/5 of the system loses money, sometimes brutally. That was deliberate. So why would any government build the fastest, largest, most advanced rail network on Earth, knowing the spreadsheet would bleed? To understand the gamble, start with scale. China's high-speed trains now reach 97% of cities with more than 500,000 people. The official target is 70,000 kilometers of high-speed track by 2035. That is not a transport upgrade. It is a national rewiring project. Railways are normally judged like businesses. Do the trains fill seats? Do fares cover maintenance? Can debt be repaid? On those questions, most of this network fails. But China asked a bigger question. What if the railway itself changes where people live, where factories grow, and how far opportunity can travel in one day? That changes everything. The answer begins in 1964, when another country proved that steel wheels could move like aircraft without leaving the ground. In 1964, Tokyo prepared for the Olympics, and Japan launched the Shinkansen between Tokyo and Osaka. The trains ran at 210 kilometers an hour across nearly 500 kilometers. At the time, that was almost unreal. But speed demanded a different railway. Ordinary curves were too sharp. Old signals were too slow. Conventional track left no margin for error. So Japan built fresh alignments, softer gradients, wider curves, and a dedicated high-speed system. The lessons spread worldwide. High-speed rail seemed to belong to wealthy, compact, densely populated countries. France could do it. Germany could do it. Spain and Italy could follow. But China looked impossible. The country is about 5,000 kilometers wide. Its richest regions sit along the eastern coast, around the Pearl River Delta, the Yangtze River Delta, and the Capital Region. Farther west, hundreds of millions lived across mountains, plateaus, deserts, and inland provinces with weaker links to growth. For decades, geography acted like a wall. In the early 2000s, ordinary passenger trains averaged barely 60 kilometers an hour. Beijing to Guangzhou could take more than 20 hours. Flying was not a clean solution. Airspace was heavily controlled by the military. Airports were limited, and tickets were unaffordable for many workers. Distance was economic punishment. Then, in 2008, China opened a short high-speed line between Beijing and Tianjin for the Olympics. It was just over 100 kilometers long. The trip fell to about 30 minutes. The top speed was 350 kilometers an hour. The first technology came through foreign partnerships. German Siemens Velaro designs were licensed. Early trains were built abroad, then assembled locally through technology transfer. Japanese and French expertise entered too. The strategy was blunt. Buy the best, learn fast, then build independently. Passengers gave the answer immediately. Even with modest average incomes, people paid extra to save time. That single demand signal unlocked the entire gamble. Then came blood. In July 2011, near Wenzhou in eastern China, 2 high-speed trains collided on a viaduct. 40 people died. Nearly 200 were injured. The investigation exposed serious problems in signaling, control systems, safety checks, emergency response, and oversight. The disaster hit a program moving at extreme speed. Construction deadlines had been compressed. Supervision had weakened. Earlier that year, the railways minister had already been removed during a corruption investigation. He was later convicted of taking more than $10 million in bribes. The official report placed major leadership responsibility on him. The system had not merely failed technically, it had failed institutionally. The brakes came hard, speeds were reduced, new project approvals froze, investment slowed. In 2013, the Ministry of Railways was dissolved. Regulation moved into government, while operations were separated into what became China Railway. But the pause did not last. By 2017, China was running its own Fuxing trains, meaning rejuvenation, at 350 kilometers an hour. By 2020, the network reached nearly 38,000 kilometers. By the end of 2025, it crossed 50,000. The machine accelerated again. How was it built so fast? Scale lowered the price. China laid around 12,000 kilometers of high-speed track in just 5 years. In 2025 alone, it opened nearly 3,000 kilometers. Costs were lower too. A kilometer of Chinese high-speed rail costs around $17 million to $21 million. The range is closer to $25 million to $39 million. In California, it pushes about $56 million. Land is part of the answer. In California, buying land and right-of-way can consume around 18% of project cost. In China, it is under 8%. Standardization did the rest. When one country builds tens of thousands of kilometers to repeated designs, parts, crews, machines, and methods become cheaper. Even mountains did not stop it. Huge viaducts carry tracks across valleys. Tunnels cut through terrain that once isolated whole regions. The flagship Beijing to Shanghai service covers more than 1,300 kilometers in under 4 hours, making it the fastest scheduled train route on the planet. China has also tested maglev trains at 600 kilometers an hour. A new bullet train designed for 400 kilometers an hour is already in development. In 2025, the railways carried more than 4 billion passenger journeys. That number hides the losses. The engineering is spectacular, but the geography is ruthless. High-speed trains need gentle curves, straight approaches, and protected corridors. That means land, and city center land is expensive. China made a trade. Instead of threading every line into crowded downtowns, it built many new stations outside cities, where land was cheaper and relocation was easier. On major trunk routes, stations sit an average of about 14 kilometers from the cities they serve. In smaller places, the gap becomes strange. Some stations are 60, 70, even nearly 100 kilometers from the town. On the sign. That is not convenience. That is a bet. The bet was urban growth. Build the station first, then sell surrounding land for apartments, offices, and new districts. Sometimes it worked dramatically. Kaojiawan Station in Chongqing opened in an empty field in 2015 and was mocked as a stop to nowhere. Today, towers surround it. Sometimes nothing arrived. At least 26 high-speed stations have sat idle, closed after opening, or built without proper passenger service. Xiong'an Station near Beijing shows the ambition at giant scale. Opened in 2020, it covers around 475,000 square meters, roughly 66 football pitches. It was designed as a huge Asian rail hub for a new city, yet much of the wider network around it remains unfinished or planned, leaving the station below its intended scale. The World Bank found that Chinese high-speed lines generally need more than 40 million passengers a year to cover operating, maintenance, and debt costs. A few lines destroy that target. Beijing to Shanghai carries more than 200 million passengers annually and earns roughly $1.5 billion to $2 billion in profit each year. But that route is special. It joins two extremely wealthy, dense, powerful regions across favorable terrain. Maybe 6 lines achieve similar financial performance, mostly in the east. Lines reaching places like Yunnan, Gansu, and Xinjiang often fall far short. In the 9 months to the end of 2024, one audit-based estimate put high-speed rail losses around $14 billion. Freight earns money. Much passenger high-speed rail does not. So why keep building? Because the railway was never just a railway. It was industrial policy, urban policy, regional policy, and political integration welded into one system. Track orders feed heavy industry.
Inland cities gain access to coastal markets. Workers travel farther.
Students return home more often. Business meetings become day trips. The country collects value elsewhere. Researchers found that high-speed rail created journeys that had not existed before. Cities linked by fast trains became more productive, attracted investment, increased tourism, and exchanged skilled workers more easily. The value appeared in property, jobs, taxes, and spending, far beyond ticket revenue. That is the hidden accounting. China's planners then scaled the idea into city clusters. The Greater Bay Area links 11 cities, including Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Macau. Hong Kong to Shenzhen takes about 14 minutes by high-speed rail. Hong Kong to Guangzhou is under 50 minutes. At that speed, cities begin acting like districts. The same model now shapes 19 official city clusters across the country. Together, these clusters generate well over 90% of China's economy. High-speed rail is the connective tissue inside them and between them. But tracks cannot solve everything. Hong Kong and Macau still have separate legal and monetary systems. Borders, rules, and politics remain. The train can compress geography, but it cannot erase institutions. Meanwhile, China now produces close to half of the world's rolling stock and sells high-speed technology abroad. Yet other countries cannot easily copy the hidden system behind it. They can buy trains, but not the land powers, debt tolerance, planning control, and the whole web of authority that makes it all work. Or construction speed. A state willing to carry about $850 billion of railway debt indefinitely is rare. And now the warning lights are flashing. Inside China, critics use the phrase gray rhino, a huge visible danger everyone pretends not to see. One respected economic geographer who has briefed Xi Jinping has argued that only a fraction of the lines should have been built, and that more than 100 shorter routes run close to empty. A top transport professor warned that the obsession with 350-kilometer-an-hour passenger trains has starved freight infrastructure. Analysts say maintenance alone could eventually consume a fifth of original construction costs every year. In 2024, fares on profitable routes rose by as much as 20% to support weaker lines. In January 2026, Beijing tightened rules. New intercity lines must prove at least 15 million passengers a year. Regions with underperforming lines can be blocked from building more. Yet, new lines still received approval. That is the contradiction. By normal accounting, much of this network fails. By national strategy, it may be one of history's boldest infrastructure bets. China treated distance as a public enemy, then attacked it with steel. And the result is not clean. It is not simply genius, and it is not simply waste. It is a machine that creates value in one place and buries debt in another. The trains are fast enough to shrink a country. The question is whether they can outrun the bill. China built the future on rails and chained it to $1 trillion shadow.